Hi everyone, we're back with Web Access Matters. I'm your host, Pedro Velhinho, and today we have an amazing conversation with Charlie Turrell. She's the engagement lead of UK's Ministry of Justice and also the founder of Champions of Accessibility Network. Join us, don't miss out. Hey, Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and speak with us for a bit about accessibility and all this. And let me just start. I would love for you to kind of present yourself and tell me a bit about the background and how you came to get started with accessibility.
Fabulous. Yeah, of course. So I'm currently at the Ministry of Justice. I'm the engagement lead there and accessibility champions manager. So it's a little bit of a dual role. Previously was at the BBC alongside Gareth, who I know you've had on before, and Jamie Knight, who's also fabulous, and a few other people on my team. So I was there for quite a long time as accessibility champions manager there. I also started CAN, which is the Champions of Accessibility Network. We just hosted our fourth in-person meetup last week, which we had about between 75 and 80 people come, which was absolutely lovely. Even some that flew from New York, which was delightful to have people so dedicated to
Yeah,
accessibility.
that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely massive. Do you know what? It was lovely. It's like a meeting of old friends, genuinely. We run networks. Well, we've run these networks for about 4 or 5 years now, alongside Heather and Gareth, which has been great. And then I have a small company with Gareth as well, which is ably.com. So I spread myself far too thin, but I do really enjoy the work. So I don't mind it at all. And it was Gareth's fault actually who got me into accessibility originally. I joined the BBC as an EA, executive assistant, to quite a few different people, which was mainly for me to get to know the business really quickly and to find out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And quite quickly, Gareth grabbed me and was like, "Okay, you started a network of PAs and you've done this." And I was like, "Right, so have you ever been interested in accessibility?" And I thought, not really, I'm not gonna lie. And he was like, "Emails aren't great." And I thought, "Oh, how? Please show me why. What's going on?" And as he showed me, I was like, "Okay, now I fully understand that that link text needs to be more descriptive and there's more text than in my images. And if I'm communicating with people across a business, why do I think that they are communicating just like me? Why have I not thought that there's a variety there?" And so it was really nice to kind of have a bit of a whirlwind insight to accessibility and start getting involved in the accessibility champions and seeing what wonderful work was going on. So it was a genuine delight to be able to move into this world, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it since.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that. So pretty much you weren't aware of accessibility per se, right? Before that, and
No,
then you end up creating and founding the Champions of Accessibility Network. How does that come to be?
I know. Do you know what? A level of imposter syndrome that really does spur you making a community, which is really odd because that was the session, or the entire focus of the session at the Can Network meetup last week. And it was a dry run of what we're going to be doing at TechShare Pro, which is a conference that's happening in November. And it is all on imposter syndrome. And mainly because I spend my entire life feeling like an imposter because I'm not particularly technical. But actually, I love the subject. I love people. I care about the way that people interact with the world and making sure that that level of communication is equal. And because we don't want to leave anybody out, we don't want to be excluding people. That's really, really important. And so I think it's odd. I kind of wanted to find my people and be like, "Am I the only one that feels like they don't belong here?" Turns out no is the answer to that. And I'm sat on a panel with people who are leading accessibility at JP Morgan Chase, at Parliament, who have written a book on inclusive design, who are doing things in the prison service, and I'm sat there with these incredible people, all feeling the same way I do. But I think that's very much just get involved in accessibility, even if you don't think that you belong. We all start somewhere. Accessibility never finishes. You're never done. You've never won it. You've never been like, right, I'm done now. There's nothing else to learn about. Someone else decided to create something. And so I think mainly to be able to influence and encourage one another. And so if I can do it for somebody else and get them interested in accessibility, then hopefully I'll feel like less of an imposter. Go on.
No, no, hopefully not. No, that's amazing. And but you do have huge players, right, within the network,
Yeah.
Google, Microsoft, and so many others. Is it? not hard, but how do you engage them? Is what are the challenges there to engage all those big companies?
I think being able to understand that you've all got a mutual interest is really key. I think, and I'm just going to be honest. I try not to be overly professional. It's strange. Like as I first got into accessibility, it's one of the few spaces I felt like I could unmask as an ADHD person. That my needs, the barriers that I experienced, could be discussed in a way that didn't stop a career progression. It was quite open. Gareth, as you've known, like ADHD, a plethora of other things going on. But it's very open and sincere and honest about it. And there's also other people on my team who ADHD, autistic, spinal cord injury, who are some of the most incredible developers, designers that you've ever met. And they were really honest about the way that they needed to communicate. And I thought, oh, okay, like the more kind of authentic that you are, I think people relax into talking about accessibility. And then Gareth introduced me to a couple of different people and said, just go for it, go and have these conversations with people. And the more kind of honest and relaxed that I was, and said, you know what, I don't know certain things that you're doing. Tell me about them. Like people are really passionate about the work that they do. We're quite an empathetic group of people because of accessibility tends to be one of those spaces where people avoid you is the only way I can describe it. You come in accessibility stick and being like, "That's not great," and they're like, "Right, now we need to do some extra work." You do have to be able to be quite personable, and kind of explain that to people. And I think again, we want to make the world a better place. We see the impact that it has on disabled people, and so the more kind of you're open and honest about that, and have that conversation with these senior leaders, there's that common ground right away, and they get to then showcase the work that they've done. They can talk about their journey. Everybody had to start somewhere. I mean, Chris Patton and I, like we've talked quite a lot over the years about accessibility, and he runs the team at Google, and I view him as this incredible human being. And yet he will still sit there and be like, "Oh, I don't know the answer to that," and it feels quite comfortable actually, to kind of go, "Well, if you don't and I don't, and we can both go and look that up together." Then it feels like we're both humans just trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, yeah. I think you mentioned like a few keywords that I really like honesty, especially authentic, being authentic, relating in an authentic way. Whether it's like you said, just saying I don't know.
Exactly.
Let's find the answer together. I think that's amazing. Can you find similarities between the dealings that you have with those big companies and the government, which I know that you're involved with right now in the Ministry of Justice, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what are the similarities or the challenges there?
It's very odd, actually. I mean, coming from the BBC, and having accessibility embedded in right from the very beginning. I mean, it was an organisation, I'm sure Gareth has mentioned, that's been doing this for a long time, built from that. And so the processes were really kind of embedded. And so a lot of the times the conversations that you were having were more developed accessibility conversations. It wasn't how to do alt text. It was like, what does this look like in journalism? Like, are we mentioning race and gender and ethnicity? Like, when does that become relevant in the story? Like, is that something that's appropriate? We were having these kind of complicated conversations, and that was great. Then coming to government, where I'm not gonna lie, there's still areas of it where we're going, what's accessibility? There's the design areas. I think we've got some ex-BBC champions, which was really helpful to have. But there's still quite a lot of that conversation around trauma-informed design, trauma-informed research, that understanding of the environment and looking at it from a social model point of view. But there's areas of government where you wouldn't class them as digital. Um, and even though they are producing digital things, they see themselves more in the non-digital space that are still fighting for accessibility to be included. So the difference is there, but the common ground is that you are understanding the people that you serve in, and there is a willingness to make sure that there's a level of equality there. And so that I think that's probably where those similarities lie. Government, no, is very structured, and I think the pressure to make things right is heavier. I mean, with the BBC and these other different companies, a lot of it is geared around entertainment. So I've worked with people from Netflix and Co-op and various other different places, and it is very much about the enjoyment and even like e-commerce, being able to purchase something, doing whatever, and there's that kind of vibe there. Whereas here, it's sometimes a very serious subject. It's someone going through the prison system that might have serious trauma, that might have PTSD, that might have a head trauma, that might have a very like low reading age. So in average in prisons, it's around 6 years old. And so if you're navigating quite a tense environment and then you're given information that you can't process and you're having probably the worst day of your life, you know, that there's a real pressure there to make sure that we get that right. Legal aid, you know, if you're not managing to get that, that could be a life or death situation. And so I think the heaviness there is the difference as well. So I think, yeah, I think we all trying to do something that matters. But I still think there's varying levels of knowledge and experience so far, especially in government.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, because often, I think more often than not, we forget that accessibility is such a wide subject to
It
address.
is,
Right?
yeah.
It's not just blind or this or that people that need access to information content. And the one true thing I love about accessibility is how it kind of tends, or at least aims, to democratize the access to information, and I love
Yeah.
that. It kind of puts us all in a level playing field, right?
Yeah.
um, and so, what are the challenges, or if there are still some challenges, like when accessing digital information, or when accessing digital information, what are the most common misunderstandings that you've been finding
I think
when dealing?
Yeah, I think the challenge is often is that people separate disabled people and non-disabled people. And so when you're first coming into accessibility, you go, oh, what can we do for someone that's blind or deaf or hard of hearing, or whatever it is? And I'm like, okay, we need to get away from thinking about that. As much as that medical element is still really very relevant, if someone has got a motor disability and they're using some assistive technology, it doesn't really matter what environment they're in, there's still going to be some challenges there, especially if the tech isn't up to speed. I mean, access to tech can sometimes be some of the problems as well because it's very expensive. But we need to, I think the challenge is people not seeing that it is an environmental thing. And so no matter who you're speaking to, you need to think, okay, so how is that person approaching that day? Is it been, have they had poor sleep because they've got young children? You know, is it quite a stressful work environment? Is there a lot of pressure? Again, journalists are maybe on in war-torn countries, etc. You know, there's a lot of different pressures there. We're not thinking about it just is this person who might have a disability going to navigate. You're thinking about the way that they are experiencing it in that environment. So again, even if you're in the office, if it's a very busy office, we're kind of saying to people, you know, you might have to have headphones, and if you didn't bring them that day, you need subtitles, and that is because your office is busy. You can't all be listening to sound. Trying to get that mentality change is huge. And I think for me as a person, my main role in the BBC, as much as my role was accessibility champions manager, I was a change manager. And so it was me to try and change the culture of an organization. And so whether that was changing the culture of the Champions Network or being here and trying to change the way that people see accessibility, this change management is still in there. And I think that in any organization, you could be a developer, you could be a designer that's working in your area and trying to make things better with the back end code or making sure this form looks right. If your way of working isn't accessible, if we're not doing any research with disabled people or looking at the environments that we're doing it in, you know, if you're not trying to change the culture of the way developers do something, or the way product managers approach accessibility, if senior leadership aren't bothered, you know, there's a lot of change that needs to happen there. And I think that's one of the biggest things in any organization I see that I would start with when I've done any consulting or anything like that. I look at how people approach accessibility, how is it viewed? One of the things
uh,
that I well, also gone.
no, 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 yeah, go on, go, yeah. You're on a roll.
One of the things that I noticed, and this was why this clicked for me a little while ago, was I'd started to speak to a senior leader because I was doing a senior leadership roadshow to find out basically how, you know, legal aid agency or Her Majesty's His Majesty's prison services now all kind of have a different approach. I'd had a meeting and I was showcasing this presentation, and halfway through I thought they've zoned out and I can't figure out why that is. And what is it that you think I'm talking about? And they said, oh, like disabled people, like wheelchairs and stuff. And I was like, right, we have a fundamentally different view about what accessibility actually is. And I had to do a step back and go, right. accessibility is a mismatch between someone's environment and someone's body, and how that kind of collaborates. And then we started to understand from a digital point of view what that meant. Completely changed their view. They were like, so you're not talking about how wide the door frame is, or how many gaps there are between chairs when we're doing an event. I was like, I still am kind of. I was like, but actually accessibility is this huge thing about the environment and the way that we approach things and the way that we communicate. And I think that started to make me realize a culture change is what's needed, rather than getting into the nitty gritty of how we actually do it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think people are always on the center, or in the middle of things, right in the center of things.
Yeah,
Whether it's because we need to understand to whom are we talking to, who's our target audience, let's say, but also to provide people that will interact with that audience the right tools to do it. And I
exactly.
always go back to this example. The first time I went to London, many years ago, I remember going into the underground alone, and
Mhm.
my Oyster cards kind of, and I needed to top it up. But
Yeah,
I went there with my cane because I'm blind. So I
yeah.
went there, and someone came to me. Oh, can I help you? Oh yeah, can you help me top this up? Oh, certainly. And the way that she provided help was like spot on.
Wow, I love that.
She picked up my hand, put it on her arm, and took
Yeah,
me to the
like almost like the
yeah, that's it. That I was able to do the thing, and then she brought me back. And I remember someone took me into the train, and then on the station, at my destination, someone was there to help me out.
wow.
And this was like 15 years ago or so. So I was amazed the way that was doing here. I can assure you that in Portugal it's still not
Not
quite there yet.
no,
Many funny stories to tell, but yeah. So people for me are in the center of things, and even when we speak about assistive technology,
yeah,
if you want to do something for us,
yeah,
um, and you don't involve us, odds
yeah.
are it's going to flop.
Of course it
But-
is. Yeah.
right? We're not going to use it. So involve people, whether that doesn't matter what disability, or people that deal with disability in family or
Exactly.
wherever, they will have amazing feedback to give. Right? I think that's
Completely.
amazing.
And I think that not involving people seems like a really simple thing, but it's quite often the thing that gets missed, you know? And I think that do you know what? I love that example because that shows a level of education that this person had and a lack of fear. Because I think fear comes into this quite a lot. I mean, I when I ran the network meetup last week, I invited someone along that hadn't really been part of the accessibility community before, and that kind of like panic of how do I interact with someone that's got a service dog, or how do I interact with someone that's blind or deaf? Like what can I do to not offend somebody? And a panic in that person, and I thought that panic and sometimes stops people from interacting, that fear. And I was like, but now you're just isolating people. And so it was like, we did a little bit of this is what is comfortable, but speak to someone. They're not different in a fundamental way. I was like, they just have a limitation in certain environments. I was like, and so we can potentially remove those barriers depending on the way that we communicate. I was like, so yeah, okay, that person um might not be able to hear. I was like, but having subtitles, having a machine to be able to have any kind of subtitles in the session, and also it's a spectrum. Somebody might be blind but might have some vision. I was like, and that person might be able to explain to you how they want to interact. I was like, it's just about asking questions and being open. And by the end of the night, they're hanging out with one of my friends, Ade, who's completely blind, and they're having a full laugh in the corner, nattering away, ignoring everybody else, like not even involving us in the conversation, and chattering until 1 in the morning. And I thought, oh, you're fine now. But it's really nice, and I think having these conversations with people, the amount of research that I've seen done, and when you ask and you think not one disabled person or person that experiences this barrier has been had this conversation, and of course your solution fits you as a person rather than fit the audience that you're trying to serve. And it's frustrating, but I think one of the major issues I see is this lack of budget, lack of resource, lack of time, um, or appreciation for the level of skill that a lot of people do have, and being able to have these conversations and include the solutions, or just explain the barrier, and then we can have a little conversation about what that looks like. Doesn't mean that every person who's got a disability or has experienced those barriers will have that solution, but at least you can see the way they navigate the site. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Because in the end, we're all people, right? And I do have a couple of friends that they hate to be bothered with. Oh, are you blind? When were you blind? What can I do? And
Yeah.
so on. But I always tell, at least this is my approach. I always tell, look, it might be, I don't know, the 10th, the 12th time in that day that you interact with someone that asks you that. But for that person, you're
Yes.
probably the first person in the year
Yeah.
that they encounter. So I get it. It's very frustrating sometimes, and you're not feeling that open. But at least my approach is I tend to provide some kind of information.
Yeah.
That mentorship that maybe the next time that they encountered someone like me or with other
Yeah.
disability, the questions with might be different, or the attention, I don't know, something. At least that's my, is what's the expression, pay it forwards
Yeah.
with that kindness and information, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'm sure it has a level of fatigue that it affects people, especially, you don't know as well if someone's got a traumatic story, something they don't wanna share, and so it's definitely up to every individual, but I do love that approach because that's how people learn. We learn in communities, we share information, we share our knowledge, our experiences, and I think that's helped me really understand just the variety of people and the way that everyone approaches something, so you can never presume, always worth asking, which is nice. And you do have people where there's always a bit of a debate about how the right thing is to do and things like that, and that's fine. You get some people that are very frustrated, and especially if it is something new that has happened in their lives, and there's still a level of coming to terms with certain experiences for them personally. But again, like a bit of empathy, a bit of time, and a bit of understanding, knowing that you might meet someone that isn't as forthcoming with information, and that's not personal, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It always depends, but yeah, no, totally agree. um,
Exactly.
I do have the question here. I'm going to poke you, so to speak, with this question because it's something that I'm very curious. Like Brexit happened a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
And now we have the EAA coming into to European Union. Um, what are the main differences before the Brexit and now in terms of accessibility? And how do you compare that with the EAA that is coming into place right now?
Do you know what? With Brexit, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. I think that the freedom of movement thing was one of the things that hit quite a lot of people, and I think that sharing different cultures was a real issue. And I think that I don't know how that's necessarily come massively into accessibility, although I do feel that the intersectionality and accessibility is really key, and it is something that we don't talk about enough. I think we focus very much on accessibility as a whole, but, like, we talked a lot about I mean, I talk a lot about it with I used to be part of BBC Pride. I'm Pride Network here as well at MOJ, and the differences for someone that is part of that group, maybe queer, LGBTQ, and also as a level of a disability, I think it was really underrepresented. I mean, I went to Manchester Pride a couple of years ago, which is, kind of quite a large event, and was genuinely appalled at the lack of accessibility features. There was no subtitles on things, there was no quiet space, there was no, platform for someone that might be in a wheelchair, etcetera. And I think you can just tell that the person hasn't necessarily come across, anybody that's disabled. I worked with them a little bit, but technically the team was amazing. After we'd first started those conversations, he ran with it, and last couple of years I've seen just going, "Wow, this is amazing." But that intersectionality of it was really important, and you often quite find that that is the case when it comes to people that are going through the prison system. You have accessibility, but then you have maybe coming from a low socioeconomic background, you might have got a certain race or ethnicity that experiences certain biases, or that might not have had a level of education that you would expect from this country, etc., etc. And you can see, like, again, somebody, I mean, we had an experience of someone that wasn't being able to fill out a form to be able to visit someone in prison, and we were thinking, is the form wrong, is there something wrong with the screen reader, etc., etc., like, why aren't people completing it? And it turns out that the people that were trying to do it didn't have enough data on their phone because it was a pay-as-you-go phone, and they couldn't navigate through the whole site. And you're like, that isn't necessarily what you'd say is you class as a disability, but that is accessibility. That is not this access. So then, therefore, it's become a bit of a problem. And it tended to be people from a low socioeconomic background, or someone that used to be in prison and then is, and doesn't necessarily have access to certain technologies. And you're thinking we need to consider that. And I think from the Brexit point of view, like, not having those different communities and people to interact with means we almost have a slimmer group of people that then we can have those conversations with, or we even see from other countries how they're navigating accessibility as well. And then the EAA stuff that's come in, I think it's still too new to tell. And I think with the fact that it only came in a couple of months ago, I thought that it would have a larger impact on the community than it has. I think a lot of companies are waiting to see the impact or who's gonna get in trouble first, I'm not gonna lie. Um, I think there's a lot of prep that was involved, but the stuff there isn't necessarily around WCAG guidelines like it used to be. It's around the usability of a product or service. So yes, it might pass an audit, but are they having a comparable experience? I know that me and Gareth probably spoken about it on another podcast before, but there was a taxi booking system that the BBC procured, and technically it passed all the guidance. You know what I mean? It was the audit. It was technically WCAG accessible, etc., etc. Um, I as an able-bodied person was able to book this taxi within 2 or 3 minutes, and then Jack, who was completely blind, who was much quicker at his role than I was in general, wasn't able to do that within the 20-minute, 22-minute time window, and it was just technically yes, we could both book a taxi, um, but in the time, was it an equitable experience? No, it wasn't. And so I think with the EAA, that is what we're trying to look for, but it is a very difficult thing to try and measure, unless you're doing excessive user research, which tends to be incredibly expensive, and a lot of small companies that are trying their best are still struggling with that. So I do think with the EAA, it's early. I think the conversations are still being had, but I think until something kind of goes wrong or is a bit on fire, we're not gonna fully know the impact of that, in my opinion anyway.
No, no, no. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and yeah, he did tell that story, which I think is amazing, right? The difference
Yeah.
between accessibility and usability sometimes it just gets.
It's wild, isn't it? And I think I mean, we use it a lot of the times, and I think it's because it's it's one of the most shocking things that happen at the BBC when you see the fact that these things slip through the net, and we see it a lot at MOJ, these services it's a lot of old systems, that you can still tell are kinda like these people that are navigating. I mean, there's some systems that I can't use, and they're absolutely terrible. Trying to book any kind of hotel or get your expenses back is an actual nightmare. It's just not usable whatsoever. But you can tell that, the people have tried to pass it, but it's still not great. But again, the world is in an accessible place in quite a lot of places, and having these champions and being able to start picking at these is hopefully going in the right direction.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of that, going in the right direction, what do you think is going to be the role of AI in all this? Like, is
Do
it
you
going to
know
help?
Interesting question, really interesting question, and I think I am in 2 minds about it, in all honesty. I think for me personally, I'm an ADHD. Doing my admin is the single worst thing. Do you know what? The amount of fines that I've got, all these other different things, because I just won't do it. I've not done my expenses since the beginning of this year because I point blank refused. I know, it's terrible. There's money sitting there, and I know, and sometimes it's at the end of the month, and I think I should do my expenses, and I still don't because, like, I hate the system. I've got people in my team that are really understanding, and they're like, "Do you want me to help you do those feedback forms this session?" I was like, "Yes, please." I'll do the session, I'll do it all, but trying to do that is a nightmare. And so using things like ChatGPT, is it Gemini and a few other ones, like they and Copilot with MS Teams is quite helpful. Being able to summarize meetings, so I'm not typing the entire time when I'm doing a one-to-one with a champion. Starting an idea off is great. I mean, me and Gareth do public talks all the time, and trying to get either of us to write it down, not gonna happen. Whereas if we're talking, doing text to speech, speech text, sorry, like it's so much better because it's writing all your ideas down. We can get it out, we can talk to each other about it, we just can't write it. So things like that has been really, really helpful. I worry in the accessibility community that the reliance on AI when it comes to writing accessible code, designs, things like that, it's not going to be perfect. And I think if we are not not collaborating with a level of knowledge or training that we're also having, then we're not going to be spotting these key problems. And so people just going, "Oh, write an accessible web page." Like it's only going to be as good as the information it's already churning out. Um, I think unless you are well trained in accessibility, you've taken in some knowledge, you're not going to spot it. Like when you do Google Lighthouse or various other different things that you're using as an accessibility checker, it's like spell check. It can tell you if the word is spelt right, but it couldn't tell you if it's the right word. It's kind of using it like that. Um, I'm interesting to see where it goes. I mean, Leonie Watson, who is absolutely fabulous, she runs Tetralogical, and she's done many talks, and she's done one on AI recently, and it was really mixed, you know. I think it's a very interesting thought. There's no kind of is it good, is it bad, and result. Um, but as a completely blind person, having an AI to explain in detail certain photographs and things, she said it reduced the human burden that she might put on people around her to be able to describe images constantly. And she said so it felt like a relief. She said, but whether these images are described in a way that makes any sense, it's still quite early on. So I'm interested to see where it goes, definitely. And I think for a lot of disabled people, it's allowed people to get into work. It has given them a bit of relief when it comes down to. I mean, I was speaking to someone the other day about a system that he's building that was collaborating with AI and doing your emails and stuff, and a little bit of assistive technology. And so the AI was reading and summarizing emails and then writing responses. That meant that someone who normally finds that quite heavy, or if you've got a motor disability or anything else like that, that might find it just quite labor intensive, was speeding through it almost at the level of somebody that didn't have that disability. And that allows someone to break through that glass ceiling of maybe getting into higher leadership positions, when we often find that disabled people are marginalized when it comes to development, whether that is software or bias or however that looks. So I'm hoping that the gap there between disabled people and non-disabled people in the work environment, it might make that slightly smaller.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely a field where AI is going to be more fruitful, because I do use it every day, and I see the difference sometimes in doing
Okay,
stuff.
that's good.
Um, but I am also of two minds, like
Yeah.
yourself, because, for example, I do have my new Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, and
Oh, nice. They look really jazzy.
yeah,
Wow, yeah.
yeah, they're really cool because they can describe a lot of stuff and allows me to be much more autonomous and independent.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, no color of clothes or in the kitchen doing
that's
something.
really cool.
But on the other hand, I do not trust them to tell me if I can cross, if it's safe to cross the
Yeah,
roads, right?
yeah.
Or take me to this place, and it's still that it appears to be safe enough,
Mm,
but I'm not sure if I should try it just yet,
yeah,
because there's a fear involved yet. I don't know if it's just me or not. At
yeah,
least my feeling is that the community is all the community. I mean, blind community is a bit not fearful, but reticent to try it out, because again we don't know, because AI does make a lot of errors,
yeah,
still,
yeah.
right? Still, so I think it's a bit more, what is this, and they will tell you, instead of, can you help me do something
Mhm.
more dangerous. But that's
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to anything that's heavy, again, reading maybe, if you're taking medicines, things like that, you know what I mean? We had somebody that come on, to one of the CAN network ones, and he was showing his glasses, and they were really cool, absolutely loved them, but you could see the error that was still happening and the they're not great yet. I think we're early on in the AI world, and I'm hoping that will get better, but I do there's a level of I hate to say it, there's a level of almost like laziness that gets attached to things like that, you know what I mean? Like, are we losing a little bit of cognitive thought? Like, I don't know, I I don't know how helpful it would be yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I see these changes always take me back to a friend of mine that many years ago. He went from using a white cane to
Mm,
using a guide dog, and
okay.
he was very fearful, because I don't know, because I'm used to the cane. As
Oh,
soon as he got the dog, two things changed: the speed
yeah,
that he used to walk, he became much faster, and the social aspect of having a guide dog. He
yeah,
started to talking to everyone, because everyone would come to him. Oh, that's so cool. So I might not,
interesting.
yeah, it might not seem that it's similar, but for me it is similar, because this change now is taking me from having to, I don't know, having to, for example, having to take someone to go to take me to the barber,
Mhm,
or
mhm.
whatever, and being more autonomous, being more confident, and
Yeah, yeah,
that way making me more confident to speak with people and be more social. I know it's
um,
things that come up
yeah,
that might be strange,
yeah.
weird at the beginning, but I think it's going to help out.
I love it, yeah, and that's a really good point, and again, that's just an experience that I would never have had, and so for me, I suppose I'm fearful as an accessibility specialist, making sure that we're not gonna be losing the developers and the designers that are champions currently, that are really taking the time out to learn certain things and to come to our training and to then have these conversations when they could just go, oh, ChatGPT, make me, have this accessible code, just find this. But for the ones that genuinely do not have the time and I'm really struggling to get them to engage, is that at least a step in the right direction where at least some of it is going to be better. I just get a little bit worried, where are people going to stop? Are they going to go, oh, well, some of it's fine, and then be okay with it rather than really learning why something needs to be done? I don't know. But I think if it makes the world a slightly more accessible place, then
Yeah,
wonderful. Um,
bring it on.
yeah, and it works for some people and doesn't for others. Again, if you're ADHD or some limited movement or anything else like that, having these kind of things that be able to reword things for you. Gareth uses it a lot because he's dyslexic, and so it helps him with emails, and then you get more confident because you feel like there's going to be less mistakes, and then again, social currency is higher because you've been able to navigate situations and with a little bit more ease and less fear. So I genuinely believe that it's getting there. I think it depends on who you are and what you're using it for, but that level of understanding about what its limitations are right now is still really important.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I do think it's. I think we're still a bit far from replacing whatever it is that
Oh yeah,
people are
100%.
saying. Yeah, it's a tool. It's for right now. It's just a tool that we use for so many different things, and for us, dealing with accessibility is just being so cool and amazing. So yeah, I see that being really cool. And you mentioned that Khan Champions of Accessibility Network. You spoke about all this AI and stuff. What do you see being the next milestone for the CAN, the Khan?
For you mean after AI?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, or even with AI, but what do you think is going to be the next thing to tackle?
That's really interesting, actually. I think for us, as accessibility specialists, I think we need to look internally a little bit more. So from that point of view, and it's not necessarily the tech, but we did 2 sessions. We've done this imposter syndrome one, and with last year at TechShare Pro, we did burnout. They have been 2 of the most interactive and well-received sessions, that we've done so far, and they were about us as people. I think when you are so empathetic, and you're doing these kind of jobs because you know the impact that it has on people and you want to make things better, the world is on fire currently, and we're seeing so much injustice where I think we absorb that as people quite a lot. And we want to make things better, but we're tackling lack of budget, everything's more expensive. So accessibility is always the thing that gets cut. We're fighting against quite a lot of things. I think protecting ourselves as people and looking a little bit more on how we can be a stronger community, is going to be one of the things that I think we need to start pushing a little bit more. And then from a tech point of view, I think that AI is going to potentially build some new jobs, and hopefully maybe tackle that recruitment gap that's coming up. I know that somebody said last year that by the time I was sat at TechShare Pro, that the amount of money that that someone would have earned in comparison to a disabled person would have stopped by then. It was like mid-October, and I was like, that's absolutely ridiculous when it comes to the difference in pay. So I'm hoping that then that might move the needle a little bit when it comes to hiring. Um, I get worried about the hiring element of things too. I think the lack of support when it comes to accessibility and inclusion, especially from, let's say, America and various other different places where that's being attacked a little bit more. Um, I think that's something to watch as well in the future, and hopefully that won't affect it too much here. And maybe we can spend some time supporting our community over there of even just having a sit down and having a chat. I've had some conversations with people that are in America that are quite frankly exhausted, who's having their job title changed or their jobs cut and things like that. And I think providing as a community, is going to be really key for the next maybe 6 months. Um, Hoping to see AI takes assistive technologies as well and how they can interact.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff being done that I've been following. Even some kind of replacement for guide dogs using AI, and I think it's
Oh,
called
really?
Glidance or something. Yeah, it's I don't
Interesting.
know what to call it, but yeah, let's say a mobility aids called Glidance that kind of,
Oh,
I wouldn't
fun.
say replace guide dog, but it's going to have the same behavior. It's the idea.
Oh,
That's the
that's
idea.
fascinating.
Yeah, so that's really
Yeah.
cool.
That's really, really interesting. And I think, yeah, because a conversation I had recently was this interaction between AI and the assistive tech. And I'm like, I wonder what else people are going to be building. Just to either build AI into it or, and I don't think it will replace a lot of things. I think there's things works for a reason. If it, it's not broke, don't fix it. But I think, um, I don't know, that's the next step, I think, the interaction between that. Um, and I don't know, hopefully we'll see some new assistive technologies that are built that we didn't even dream of, again, and when you see these Meta glasses, you didn't even think that was gonna be a thing until no, and do you know what was really cool when I was speaking to, Sarah Herlinger, who's, a lead of accessibility at Apple, she talking about, the new AirPods that were gonna be coming in, which have come in now, that were also hearing aids. I think that is gonna be something that's quite fascinating. One of the things Apple and even Microsoft, like, if you've got an iPhone, the accessibility is naturally built in a lot of ways, and you've got all these features, and it is a very accessible device. And it wasn't because it was added in into the end. It was something that was always spoken about throughout the entire thing. BBC, everything that you're using tends to be more accessible than most kind of like systems and products, like because accessibility has been built in. I'm hoping that the kind of the fact that these devices and the fact that they're now accessible devices and they're going to be less expensive than maybe a hearing aid that you might get from doctors, wherever else it is. Like, I'm hoping that things will become kind of almost second nature to people and realizing that actually more people, there's not a divide between disabled people and non-disabled people. There's a lot of things that kind of coexist. So it'd be interesting to see what else maybe they'll be bringing out. Um,
Y- Yeah, I think when big companies, let's use Meta for example, when big companies start creating tech, for
yeah,
example, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, they're like a huge success within the blind community, the visually
yeah,
impaired community. It is. They are, and they are because they are a fraction of the price of the
yeah,
previous option available,
yeah,
which I think it was around $1,800, and these ones are at $300, right?
right.
Um, they're not exactly the same, but for
No,
the price you get much more value, and
yeah,
that's why it's a success, because it's a commercial thing, sorry,
yeah,
a mainstream product
yeah,
that kind of fits into the needs of a specific community, and I think that's the secret for the success of this, and hopefully more
yeah,
companies will do stuff like that. It's the same with the AirPods, like you were mentioning. It's a mainstream product
yeah.
that's going to help a specific community.
And I love
So
that.
yeah, I'm very hopeful about
That mix between communities, I'm seeing even now adverts, things like that, where you got more disabled representation, and I think the more young people as well are interacting and there's no segregation, you know what I mean? And they'll be seeing stuff that is part of mainstream, whether it's on TV shows that they're engaging in or the way that the things are advertised. I think that's really, really important, and I'm hoping that that might merge communities, and then you never know what's gonna come out of that as well. You've got these next inventors that are gonna be coming up, young now, that are gonna be seeing the way that they're interacting with people, and hopefully that will kind of impact them being able to see a bigger picture and see things that maybe we haven't even thought about inventing yet. So I'm very, very hopeful for the next generation.
Ah,
Um,
that's cool. It's cool you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, like, looking, let's say someone that wants to, it's very passionate about accessibility and wants to come into this let's say field. What would be your advice for that person?
you know what? Go and speak to people who are in the accessibility community. I get reached out to on LinkedIn every day with someone going, "I want to get into this job. Like, what do you think?" And and I will try and I'll try and speak to as many people as possible. It might take me a while to get back to you because my LinkedIn is on fire at the minute. There's too much going on, and it's lovely. But there are so many people in this field that are so open and willing to have those conversations. And having those conversations and finding out just your roots in is really, really important. It is what you know and what you can go out and start learning things, but it is having this community of people that are quite willing to train or to do mentoring or anything else like that. There's tons of it available. I was speaking to someone a couple of years ago, Marie, and then I spotted her at a convention, and then now I realized that she was helping out with my can event that last week because she was working with the other person that is running it. And I was like, "Oh, I've spoke to you years ago, and now you're into it and you're doing all this work." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, I spoke to Heather, I spoke to this person, I was working with Chris." And I thought, "Oh, that's so lovely." And then, as you get in and then you get introduced to people, it gets easier. I do think there's quite a lot of resources online. And I think get stuck into those. Like the BBC publish those resources, Google do as well. I know that Microsoft do. There's lots of guides and stuff to start reading, and I think the more you can do of that, the better. I mean, ChatGPT and things like that are really helpful in going, create me a list of things that I need to know. You know, there's a lot of information is more readily available now than it used to be. My only thing that I think we're still needed to work on as a community, and I just think it is because it's quite a large thing to tackle, is universities, colleges providing a way in to accessibility. It was never advertised as a role that I can remember when I was in school. It's not something I see in universities where it is a profession-based thing. It's quite often as like, if you're a developer and you're learning PS accessibility, you know, that is quite often how it is. Even in design, you know, it's almost as like a a mentality.
Afterthought.
Yeah, like it's gonna ruin your design, your design's gonna
Yeah, yeah,
like, it's not, that's not how it
yeah,
works. And again, I think that's an old mentality that we're trying to, you know, to move.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I think for designers, but especially, they kind of struggle with, okay, am I going to make this accessible or pretty?
oh,
And
pretty
you can do
exactly.
both.
Yeah, you can do
You,
both,
you
like,
can
there's
do
no
both.
option, like, it doesn't it's not all the restrictions that you think it's gonna be. And I would absolutely say on YouTube as well, there is some I mean, ID24, which is, Inclusive Design 24, which was on last week, actually. All their resources and videos are free. You can go onto YouTube and just go and search them. There's a lot of companies that I think DQ do the same when it comes to, their session that is earlier on in the year. At AxCon, it went out my head then. But there's quite a few people that have done some wonderful talks. Go and have a little listen because the inspiration that those people have, like I only managed to watch 2 or 3 last week, and I'm gonna have to do 2 every week and actually catch up. One of them was around inclusive design and marginalized communities, which was really fascinating. And that social currency about being able to have those conversations. And the other one was accessibility champions in Taiwan, and they've been doing some really cool workshops that I kind of went, that's a good idea. I'm going to see if I can try and do that with my group. And they were doing it in a completely different way because they had limited resources. And I thought, okay, these are some ideas and things that I can then replicate and go and have a conversation with people about. So if you are interested in it, go and reach out to people, join my CAN network, you know, even post on there and say, I'm interested in getting into accessibility. Where do I start? People will give you resources, they'll give you a helping hand. Go and visit the things like if you're in London, you've got the lab that Google have with the Discovery Centre. That's fabulous to get your mindset into like accessibility and be able to ask questions to some people that have done it for a long time. Um, and I think community is your main thing there because it's so much information out there. It can feel really overwhelming, and that's what I think to my champions. Little and often, start learning something, but do it about what you're really interested in because you'll burn out otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. Find your niche.
Find your niche exactly that, find your niche. Like, I love people, and so I'm not particularly techy, I'm really not, and I try, and I just think it's just not for me, but I love the kind of trauma-informed design stuff. I love looking at user research. I love being able to motivate people in the right way to get them interested, finding out why they wanna do it. Some people love it because they love the nitty-gritty, and some people love it because they're seeing the direct impact that it might have on people that are leaving the prison system, that now aren't reoffending because they've got the information in a way that they can understand, you know, and you really see that impact. And so find what makes you tick and then go with that because then you won't really feel like it's work either.
Yeah, great advice. And where can we find the Arcan network?
That's on LinkedIn. I can happily send you the link afterwards. But yeah, Champions of Accessibility Network. It's on there. It's purple sign, which is on there. But I think it's got nearly 3,000 people in there now, and they are so forthcoming with information and help and assistance. And then we have a meetup every month. It's online, and anybody is welcome to that. And it feels like a group of friends. Everyone says where they're from, and some people are from New Zealand and America and Singapore, and I'm like, yay! We're actually getting here and everywhere, and there'll be somebody in your area that maybe you can link up with, and there's always going to be somebody that's willing to chat. So hopefully, we'll get the next generation of people getting involved.
Hopefully, and hopefully we help with this conversation.
Definitely.
Charlie, Thank you so much for the time. A lovely conversation, lovely
Thank you.
topics, and yeah, I'd stay here all day, but I
Oh,
know you have better things to do. So
no, oh, it's just back doing my admin, which I'm avoiding. So it's been absolutely lovely to break my day up, and it's been a delight speaking to somebody else that's so passionate about it as well.
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.